Hello there. Let me know if you can hear me. Let me know. Let me know. Let me know. Let me know. Check. So I'm going to begin by playing this video for us to see. Okay, thank you, Nika and Deborah. Can you guys hear me? Let me know if you guys can hear me. Okay then. So I'm going to have to. I'll have to. I'll have to do this again. So I'm just going to check what is wrong with the video. But in spite of that, let me welcome you to this particular webinar tonight. So tonight we're going to be looking at setting boundaries for we're going to be looking at setting boundaries for stress management. Now the aim is to actually take us through how we can manage stress by setting boundaries. All right, but let us listen to that video because it was talking about stress. Okay, so I'm still going to see how I can play it before the end of this webinar because I think it's important for us to listen to it. It's really something that I want us to listen to. All right. So let me welcome you once again to this particular webinar. Now, I'm going to be sharing my screen with you while I take us through this particular journey. Okay, so today we're going to begin, we're going to look at this particular aspect. I'm sure that some of us have never really considered or thought about stress management from the angle that we're going to be looking at it from today, because you probably have never heard anybody talk about boundaries when it comes to stress management. How about now? Can you hear me? Wow. Okay, so okay, so if you can hear me now, just give me a thumbs up or just say yes. Yes, all right, thank you. I need to check something again. So I'm going to put on my slide now to check if you can still hear me. I need to be sure if it's my slide that is causing the issue or something else. So can you still hear me now? Okay, I don't want to waste your time. My intention is not to waste your time, and so we'll try to do this as quick as we can. Okay. Um, okay. But can you still hear me? All right. So we're talking about setting boundaries for stress management. Setting boundaries for stress management. And like I said, one thing about stress is that we would always experience or encounter stress. We just cannot do without that. But the most important thing is that we identify what our stressors are. That we identify what our stressors are, right? And that was why I wanted to play us that video so that we can actually see what is stressing us. So I'm going to go over the video again. I've gotten what the problem is because I need us to really understand and to hear what is going on there. So I believe that now you're going to hear R. Okay, let's play. Stress everywhere, and more, it's seen as a factor in our health, affecting body, mind, and brain. So in this talk, you're going to spend a little time on stress, its positive and more difficult sides, and what to do to tame it. This will dovetail with a lot of the other talks on our MOOC because stress is one of the newer kids on the block, and we need to know a lot about it to promote our well-being. At the time. Nowadays, we call that our window of tolerance. We don't mind getting towards the edge of the zone for a little while. For example, we can enjoy getting excited, a little anxious, a little angry, or a little scared if it's in a good and safe enough cause. Most people might enjoy something like getting excited about the outcome of a footy match. That's what Australians call football. Or a netball game. Getting terrified in a safe way by the ride on, say, a roller coaster. However, part of our eagerness to do these things is we know that they're mostly safe in the majority. Feelings and body sensations will settle safely and we'll feel back to normal sometime not too long after the game or the big day out at the amusement park. When we get out of our comfort zone, the stress begins to dramatically rise, and then we find situations distressing. We can notice changes in our body like pulse rate rising uncomfortably, blood pressure escalating, or we feel distressing levels of emotion. At even more extreme levels, we can begin to feel frozen or trapped, or even disconnect or dissociate. Then we need to use ways to calm back down and feel comfortable. Most of us do this best by using soothing from others and ways we've learned through life to calm down. After particularly stressful events or periods, we
We may even need a solid period of rest and recovery. We don't always make time for that in our modern lives. Positive psychiatry talks about using ways to settle and promote our well-being and don't hurt us. So, using our connecting conversations with others, good exercise, that mindfulness, meditation, breathing to calm down, rather than drugs or alcohol, just as an example. When we can't manage the high stress, it can begin to do damage to our well-being and become traumatic, meaning that our normal coping is overwhelmed. The good news is that even here we can often recover and often become more resilient in the process. At other times, cumulative or overwhelming stress is traumatic, and then we need strong pathways to recovery and what's called post-traumatic growth. That's where we grow as a result of difficult circumstances. Just to be clear, stress is not just all in the mind. Our bodies really feel it. And too much stress can contribute to many illnesses and times when mental health breaks down. Stress triggers inflammation, for example, and cumulative stress can eventually become disorganizing for our mental and physical life. So, learning to manage it becomes a keystone of our well-being and health. Stress regulation and stress management are a central part of positive psychology and positive psychiatry. Today, we think of it as a hierarchy of stress management. At the top are those strategies that really help us connect to ourselves and others and help our brains, bodies, minds reconnect and be restored and nourished after stress. Stephen Porges, a psychiatrist in the US, has been describing that we have a social nervous system evolved to manage stress best via our social connections. So at the top of the hierarchy for managing stress are the ways we connect and calm and soothe each other. Relationships and connected conversations. Our facial expression and our capacities to speak and use body language have actually developed in the evolution to help this process. For example, we really value and feel better when somebody shows by expression and gesture that they get us and what we're talking about. We begin to calm down. We feel really good after a shared laugh or occasionally a shared cry. And the sharing is the connecting that actually nourishes a part of our nervous system called the parasympathetic nervous system. We hear a lot about the sympathetic nervous system, the so-called fight and flight system. And people have known for a long time that the sympathetic nervous system connects with our immediate response to high stress. And we see it at work in the innervation of heart and blood vessels. It makes our pulse rate, our blood pressure go up like the accelerator pedal of a car. However, our rest and digest and restore system is the parasympathetic system. It works in our gut and our digestive system. It has connections like a brake to our heart. It powers up all those muscles, the facial expression that we were just talking about. So the social some of it is from fast-talking nerves covered in a substance called myelin, and they connect upwards to the most important conscious thinking parts of our brain to many systems. However, we also have parasympathetic input from an older nervous system with fibers that are unmyelinated. They move slower and deeper, and are responsible for some of those deep feelings in our middle. You're stressed and distressed. Terrible, deep feeling of grief, for example. When stress really overwhelms us, we can get into that older parasympathetic state of withdrawal, when the older parasympathetic system is dominating. In that state, we need to slow down, take it easy, warm up, sometimes literally, sometimes emotionally. Take time, get good care to recover. After a period of more active symptoms of illness, for example, whether mental or general medical, some people find they have a period of deep fatigue when they need to take things more slowly to restore energy and come back to their normal selves. science to back up the art of relaxation and stress relief, we encourage people to find ways to calm down and to find stress and stress management strategies that work for them. Meditation and mindfulness are powerfully effective, and they seem to offer a space to connect to ourselves, literally help us connect up body, brain, mind. However, do take lots of social soothing. Don't be afraid to get fit and busy, for example, with exercise, which uses the sympathetic system wisely, but also watch when the older, deeper system, your gut, is telling you that you're very tired or overwhelmed. You need to slow down and really rest and restore in quiet ways. Hopefully you can attune to other talks which cover stress management through great strategies like relaxation, mindfulness, exercise, creativity, play. I love to use many of them. Find what works for you and use them daily, and help your kids and those you care for to find their favourite ways. So, as we learn to surf our stress, we get stronger. Flexibility fosters resilience and highly connected minds and bodies, and our flourishing.
All right, thank you. I hope you enjoyed that. So let's go straight to what I have for us this evening. Now you watched that video and she was talking about stress, all right, helping us see and understand what stress really is and how over the years there's been an evolution as to how stress is managed. So once again, welcome. What we'll be looking at today is setting boundaries for stress management. Over the years, I've been very interested in how stress is managed. I mean, in 2016 or thereabout, no, 2017, I wrote a book on stress titled Setting Boundaries. Sorry, the title of the book was How to Break Up Stress, right? I basically shared in that book some nuggets on how you can break up stress, okay? And then here I am again about 3 years after, because I've been looking at the subject of stress management. I see a whole lot of people, a whole lot of things being said about stress management, and I really want us to look at what other means can we use in terms of managing stresses beyond what we have known before, so that we can save ourselves from the stress or from the hands of stress. And for those who didn't join at the beginning, I said it that whether we like it or not, as long as we remain humans and as long as we have reasons to move on the surface of the earth, stress would always exist. But the most important thing is to understand what our stressors are, what are the things stressing us. Very, very important for us. Now, what are the things that we'll be considering tonight? That's the keynote. We'll be looking at what healthy boundaries are. We'll be looking at healthy boundaries and self-care. We'll look at examples of healthy boundaries. We'll look at how to set personal and emotional boundaries. And then we'll look at boundaries in relationships. Then you're going to get worksheets. So you're going to get worksheets that I've titled Healthy Boundary Worksheets, and also the one for kids and parents, and a take-home message. And that's why it's good if you register. Those who signed up are going to get this takeaways or this document after this show. If you did not register, I'm sorry, you need to come on board so they can have access to these materials. These are materials that I have curated, all right, while preparing for this session tonight, because I'm very much interested that people don't just come to listen, all right, but they also come to get those resources that even while they're not here anymore, they are able to get things to work with. It's going to help them, all right, so that after now they have what they can work with. I'm a fan of you not relying on someone, all right. In my work as a therapist, I try as much as possible to ensure that I give you the tools that would help you to continue your work process or your healing process so that you don't have to rely on me every time. And that's what I'm going to do tonight as well. Okay, so introduction. Let's look at what boundaries mean. What does it mean when you talk about boundaries? Now, a boundary is a limit or space between you and the other person. Now, of course, if you use the layman language, you'd understand what boundary means. It's more or less like you're setting a restriction, all right? You're setting up a restriction for yourself between you and something or between you and someone because you don't want interference. All right. If you remember, for those of us who watch athletics, hurdles. Now, when they are for those who participate in hurdles, they have to jump over a barrier. Now, that barrier can be considered to be a form of boundary between them and the next lap. All right. And so they keep jumping over the boundary, they keep jumping over the boundary until they get to the finish line. But again, as human beings, person to person, you can set boundaries for yourselves. Persons to things, you can set boundaries for yourself. As long as the boundary is able to protect you and allow you to take good care of you. So the purpose of setting a healthy boundary is to protect and take care of you. Now, of course, there are misconceptions about boundaries and their part in relationships, and you cannot really take that away. All right, and that's because people over the years have come to misinterpret what boundaries mean. All right. And the moment people begin to misinterpret what boundaries mean, then you have a responsibility to ensure that you are actually doing the right thing, not because of them. All right. Because the most important thing, it's more about you and what makes you stay healthy and what helps you to overcome whatever challenge it is that you are facing, and not as much as it is about them. Because the moment you begin to think about them, all right, while you are setting the boundaries, there are certain things that you need to consider. So as we go on in this webinar tonight, you're going to understand and know when to consider them and when to actually not consider some other persons, or how to actually put all this together so that you're able to act normally and have everything going on for you. So let's look at personal and emotional boundaries. Personal and emotional boundaries. Now, while boundaries are often psychological or emotional, boundaries can also be physical. For example, if you decline a physical contact from a coworker, that's a way of setting up an important boundary. You have set up a boundary between you and a coworker, a physical boundary for that matter. Sometimes we don't think about physical boundaries. We more or less think about creating emotional boundaries for ourselves or mental boundaries for ourselves. We do not pay attention to the kind of boundaries that we can set, especially in the workplace. Especially in the workplace, a lot of times we don't pay attention to the things that happen in the workplace and how we can actually set boundaries. All right. So it's an important thing when you decline physical contact from a coworker, right? One that's just as crucial as setting an emotional boundary. All right. And for example, if you ask that same coworker not to make an unreasonable demands on your time and emotions, all right. So, if, for example, if you're asking them that, look, you don't want them to make demands that are not helpful, all right, that are going to encroach into your space, right? Those demands that would encroach into your space. If you make such requests, then you'd actually might just be setting up a form of physical boundary between you and that person, and that helps you to define your work environment. That helps you to define how you want your work environment to be. All right. So that's that as regards that. Now let's look at how to set up physical boundaries. How do you set up physical boundaries? First of all, you need to define the desired boundary. So you need to identify what boundary you want to set. If you're going to set personal boundaries for whatever reason, there are 4 things that you need to consider. The first one is define it, right? And by define it means identify that boundary that you want to set. Identify the boundary that you want to set, all right? Locate, plan it, all right, and understand that this is the boundary that I want to set. The next thing is that you communicate, all right. You communicate. So by communicating, you say what you need. You say what you need by the time you are communicating. Communicating means you telling whoever is involved or wherever it is that you want to be aware of the boundary you want to set. That look, I'm sorry, I will need to create this space because I need it. Okay. Now, the next one is stay simple. You don't have to over explain yourself, right? You don't have to over explain yourself. You don't have to over explain why you are setting that boundary. Just go on and set the boundaries, okay? So, like I said, define, all right, communicate, and then stay simple. When you define, you identify the desired boundary. When you communicate, you say what you need. When you stay simple, you are not over explaining things. Now, the next one is set consequences, right? By setting consequences, it means that you are saying why it's important. All right. So it's good that you explain to the person, all right, why you are setting that boundary. You explain to the person why you are actually setting that boundaries and the importance of setting the boundary. Now, this helps to take away any form of ambiguity or the person misunderstanding what you're trying to do. All right. So if you're able to communicate that, all right, the person is able to understand why you're setting that boundary. Okay. Now, even if it's not between you and a person, okay, if you are setting it up, of course, this is personal boundaries, and so it's important, all right, that you actually explain, all right, to this person what the consequences are. Again, do not forget that you don't have to over explain, you don't have to make it complex. Just stay simple. The simpler it is, the simpler you pass across your message, the easier it is for whoever you're communicating with to understand whatever it is that you're trying to say. All right. But the moment you begin to elaborate and elaborate, you probably even lose the person. All right. And the person doesn't even understand what you're talking about anymore. All right. So in terms of setting personal boundaries, you need to define it, you need to communicate it, you need to make it stay simple, don't over explain it, and you need to set consequences. Say why it's important. You can tell yourself this, you can tell yourself why this boundary is important, all right, so that constantly you remind yourself whenever you're about to go the other way, whenever you're about to break your own boundaries, you're able to remind yourself why it's important to set that boundary or the boundaries and why you set them in the first place. Now, there are boundaries in relationship. Now, Cloud and Townsend 2002 said, when one person is in control of another, love cannot grow deeply and fully as there is no freedom. All right. I'll take that again. When one person is in control of another, love cannot grow deeply and fully as there is no freedom whatsoever. Now, what that means is when in healthy boundaries can be the difference between a healthy and a happy relationship and a toxic and a dysfunctional relationship. It's as simple as that. All right. When you set healthy boundaries, it can make the difference between a healthy and happy relationship, all right, and between a toxic and a dysfunctional relationship. I mean, you can't wish that away. It's very important that we understand that aspect of this entire boundary setting thing, because the moment you do not understand that, you're going to put yourself up for whatever consequences that you did not even prepare for. All right. So let me also mention here that a common misperception about personal boundaries is that keeping everyone in our lives at arm's length is the same as having a strong and healthy boundary. No. All right. Setting boundaries actually promotes closeness. All right. Setting boundaries actually promotes closeness. There is this thing that they say that scarcity adds value. I mean, I've been hearing that now for years, where they say that scarcity adds value. I've also come to think that that statement is true. All right, because I remember some years back when I left my former church. All right, to move to another church, and I realized that each time I visited the church, the welcome was warmer than when I was there. I mean, I had to conclude that they didn't rate me, like they had no regard for me while I was there. All right. Even if now, for example, if you go back to the university you graduated from, your institution, there are still people who know you, all right, within the system. They are going to welcome you like they have seen a very important person. Of course, you're important, but you get what I mean. Like, because you're scarce, because you're not, they don't see you every time. All right, and that's why I believe that setting boundaries actually promote closeness. And I also believe that it's not all about putting someone in arm's length. All right, but you're setting healthy boundaries. People don't have to think, all right, that you're keeping them at arm's length, but it's because you want to have a strong and healthy relationship with them. All right, that your closeness is defined, that you know what you want and you are clear about it and you go for it. And so for those in relationships who are finding it difficult to create boundaries. Now, I'm not talking about people who are married right now. No, people who are in relationships, or you have something that you're looking up to, you have something that you're looking up to. You begin to realize that even in friendship, let me even bring the perspective of friendship. When you have friends, some of them will stick closer than others would stick, right? Some of them you'd hold in high esteem than some others. It's not because you're wicked, it's not because you don't like them, but you need to realize that the most important thing is what is healthy for you. All right. If a relationship is not healthy for you, then you need to let that relationship go. All right. If a relationship is bringing more harm than good your way, then you need to let that relationship go, or you set boundaries for that relationship so that both of you can make the best use of your time and be the very best that you can be, and for the sake of your mental health. Now, in general, healthy boundaries are those boundaries that are set to make sure that you are mentally and emotionally stable. No more story. That's just it. Healthy boundaries, in general term or by general definition, are those boundaries that are set to make sure that you are mentally and emotionally stable. That is just the aim of healthy boundaries. The goal is to see that you are mentally and emotionally stable. I mean, that is why you would have to set up those boundaries so that you do not lose your mind, like is often said. You don't want to lose your mind. If you don't set boundaries, you are going to lose your mind. I can assure you. Not because you want to, not because you decided that you wanted to, but it's just going to happen that way if you do not choose to set healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries can serve to establish your identity. Healthy boundaries can serve to establish your identity. It can help you to know who you really are. It can help you to understand your personality and who you are when you set healthy boundaries. Specifically, healthy boundaries can help people define their individuality and can help people indicate what they will and will not hold themselves responsible for. Please, can you put in the comment section if you can still hear me? Can you just say yes, 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 yes if you can still hear me? And if you're still with me, I need to know that you're still with me. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. So let's continue. Let's continue. All right. So I was talking about the importance of healthy boundaries, and I said healthy boundaries can serve to establish one's identity. It helps you to know yourself, helps you to know who you really are. Now, specifically, healthy boundaries can help people define their individuality and can help people indicate what they will and will not hold themselves responsible for. Now, we are quick to blame ourselves a lot of times. All right. We are quick to blame ourselves a lot of times. We are quick to we're quick to think that we are at fault for what we have done and make it seem like the other person, okay, is actually doing the right thing. All right. And then people begin to guilt trip you and make it seem like you're on the very wrong side. No, right? By the time you set healthy boundaries, okay, you're able to create that identity for yourself of who you really are. All right. And so nobody can make you feel less of yourself. Nobody can make you feel less important of yourself. Another way to think about this is that our boundaries might be rigid, loose, or somewhere in between, or even non-existent. All right. But then a complete lack of boundaries may indicate that we don't have a strong identity or that we are enmeshed with someone else. Now, sometimes we find it difficult to set boundaries because we don't even know who we are. All right, we don't have a sense of identity. We don't have a sense of belonging. We are lost in the identity of another person. We are lost in the how do I put it now? We are lost in the character of other people, and so we find it difficult to even know who we really are. We find it difficult to even identify ourselves because we are interacting with who we are not supposed to be. We don't know ourselves. All right. But the moment you're able to set those healthy boundaries, you're able to know who you are, okay, and you're able to even decide for yourself how you want to live your life. All right. But if for any reason at all you are not able to set those boundaries, okay, check yourself. All right, check yourself. It's likely that you really do not have a strong identity, all right, or you're enmeshed with someone else. You are hiding in the identity of another person. An identity crisis is a very big deal. All right, it's a very big deal. So if you're listening to me and you think that you don't even know who you are, you find it difficult to define your personality, you find it difficult to even say who you really are. When people ask you who are you, you are confused. Everything that you're doing, you're trying to imitate another person. You're trying to be like someone else. Then it's time for you to break loose from that. All right. So if you're listening to me and you don't even know who you really are, you're confused as to who you are, you have lost yourself. All right. You have lost who you are. Then you should seek help because there's a problem right there that needs to be solved. Otherwise, you continue to live in the image of another person. All right. Think about your shadow. All right. Think about your shadow. Now imagine someone wants to touch you and the person is trying to touch your shadow instead of touch you. All right. So your shadow, your image is casting shadow because of the presence of light. All right. And so if you do not know who you really are, all right, you'll be chasing, you're going to be the shadow of that other person. All right. So while they are seeing that person, you are hiding behind that person. So nobody would see you. And so you can't find yourself. You don't know who you are. Remember that your shadow doesn't really give the true picture of your face. It's just an image. But people need to know you. All right. So let me just stop. This is not about identity crisis, but I just need to say that if you do not really know who you are, you're finding it difficult to know who you are, you do not understand your personality, then you should reach out to me after this video, after this class, and let us talk about it. It's very important that you understand yourself. You can't be working in the shadow of another person. All right. So let's look at advantages of healthy boundaries. Let's look at advantages of healthy boundaries. Very, very important that we discuss that. Now, like I said, setting healthy boundaries can have many benefits, including helping people make decisions based on what is best for them. All right, not just the people around them. Now, this autonomy is an important part of self-care, right? So, advantages of healthy boundaries: you have good mental health. All right, you can influence other people's behavior. Okay, good emotional health, avoidance of burnout. You develop an identity for yourself and you develop an autonomy for yourself. Now, as individuals, we always want that autonomy. All right, you want to be autonomous. You don't want to depend on someone. You can't let You can't let somebody or something dictate your happiness. You can't let somebody or something dictate how you feel about something. All right. And so it's important that you understand that one of the advantages of healthy boundaries is that you develop autonomy. You decide what is good for you. You decide what you want for yourself. All right. And not someone dictating it for you. All right. So it's part of self-care, actually. Setting up healthy boundaries is part of self-care. It means that you care about your health. It means that you care about yourself. It means that you care about how you are doing. All right. Your mental health is important and you really want to pay attention to it. But the moment you do not pay attention to that, they are giving yourself, they are giving yourself, you are giving yourself the opportunity, okay, to allow someone else dictate for you how you should feel. All right. So when you set those healthy boundaries, many benefits, like I said, good mental health, influence other people's behavior. Now imagine if, because you have set boundaries, you're able to help other people make important decisions in their lives. Now imagine if you have set those boundaries, you're able to help people. You're an influencer. Let me put it that way. You are an influencer in terms of other people's behavior. So it means that they know that they cannot call you at certain times of the day. So all these, I prefer to call in the night. I prefer to call in the midnight because there is no noise and all that. Cuts that trash out. Because you have set the boundaries, they know that at certain times they can't call you. They know that they cannot request certain things from you. And so you are gradually reducing the stress in your life. All right, because you have set that boundary. And so even they themselves begin to adjust to the new you. You don't want to underestimate how this helps your emotional health. You just don't want to underestimate, because you're going to take away the permission from people to get you offended. You're going to take away the permission that you have given people to upset you. You're going to take away the permission. Now you have the power to dictate who is going to play a role in your happiness. All right. And so you're not getting angry just for nothing, because nobody is having the power, nobody is having the permission, nobody is having the authority, all right, to decide for you. You have the key. All right. You have dictated the key and you have decided who you're going to give the key to, which is you. All right. And again, you're going to avoid burnout. Trust me, you're going to avoid burnout. I remember some years back when I was working, and I realized that I was always getting back home tired. And then I noticed that the moment I get back home, all right, I still do not shut down my system, because I'm still working and I'm expecting them to send me a mail or something. All right, until my laptop was always open. I don't shut down. All right, and I'm always waiting for them to send me mail. Or sometimes I just wake up in the middle of the night because I need to check what is happening at work, and I realize I'm in one Skype group or the other. Okay, but then I realized one day that it was affecting me. So I told myself, you know what, solution, nobody. All right, I need to fix a time for myself. So once I leave the premises of the office, I shut down for that day. Anything that I'm not able to do, except it's an emergency, it will wait till the next day. In fact, at some point, right, I turned off my my company line. All right, I turned off my company line from calls. But later on, I had to change that. Right. So what I started doing is that once it is midnight, okay, once it's midnight, I turn off my phone, because if you're calling me at that point in time, it's definitely going to affect my work the next day. And I realized that I was getting to work tired. How do I explain that I spent the night in my house, yet I get to work the next morning and I'm exhausted? What was I doing through the night? All right, but because I was always thinking, okay, of work, I was always thinking of perhaps they can call me. All right, and even if you're an entrepreneur right now, you need to create that boundary as well. All right, you need to create that boundary. So you need to avoid burnout, and healthy boundaries would help you avoid burnout. Like I said earlier, it's going to help you develop an autonomy. Key thing, again, like I said from the previous slide where I was talking about identity, is that it's going to help you develop identity. It's going to help you understand who you truly are. It's going to help you understand what you stand for, and even help you develop for yourself who you really want to be. So let's look at healthy boundaries and self-care. I have to take some water. Healthy boundaries are crucial. They're a crucial component of self-care. I think I said that before. Healthy boundaries are a crucial component of self-care. And that's because in work or in a personal relationships, poor boundaries lead to resentment, anger, and burnout. Poor boundaries lead to resentment, anger, and burnout. So it's very important that we understand that setting boundaries is part of self-care. Setting boundaries is part of self-care. All right. And if you do not want to experience burnout and do not want to experience resentment, then then you need to understand that you need to set boundaries. So take care of yourself. Very, very important. Take care of yourself. And so part of taking care of yourself is actually setting those healthy boundaries. All right. It's part of setting those boundaries. So a lack of healthy boundary can lead to can negatively affect all aspects of your life. If you do not set boundaries, it can actually affect aspects of your life. All right. Let me say something here. Let me say something here. Um, let me say something here. Very, very important. So I don't take it out. Now, self-care, right? I said it earlier that self-care is very important, all right, and it can influence all that we do. All right. And so self-care, which can include setting boundaries, help us live a healthy life. All right. It helps us live a very healthy life and help us put in perspective the things that we want to allow and the things that we don't want to allow in our lives. I thought I should mention that. So when you're setting those healthy boundaries in the life of self-care, understand that it's also because you want to decide what you want in your life. So a lack of healthy boundaries can negatively affect all aspects of your life. More generally, the consequences of not setting healthy boundaries often include stress, financial burdens, wasted time, and relationship issues, which can in turn cause mental distress. A lack of healthy boundaries can negatively affect all aspects of someone's life. If you want to debate this, chat me up after now. And if you do not set boundaries, it can negatively affect all aspects of your life because everything about you, they are interwoven. They're interwoven. Your financial well-being, your emotional well-being, your physical well-being, your vocational well-being, your intellectual well-being, your social well-being, all make you a complete human. And so the moment one suffers, it affects the other. When you're stressed, all right, your finances suffer it. You waste time on things that you do not even need to spend time on. Your relationship suffers it as well. And finally, you experience mental distress. And the moment mental distress sets in, you're on a journey to mental health problems. And when mental health problems set, if you do not take care of it, you're on your way, right, to mental illness. And so you need to understand that when you're setting these boundaries, it's not because you just feel like, no, you're not setting boundaries because you just feel like setting boundaries. You're setting the boundaries because you need to take charge of your health. You need to take charge of yourself. You're a complete human being. All right. And every aspect of your well-being matter a lot. Like I said, your social well-being, your financial well-being, your emotional well-being, your physical well-being, your vocational well-being, and your intellectual well-being. If you look at this diagram, you see that it's a circle. All right, an entirely new circle. All right, and you are the center of it all, and so everything pertains to you. Now, some teachers have come to set boundaries. All right, because if you're a teacher and you are working, you realize that it is important for you to set boundaries sometimes. Otherwise, anything would go. And the moment anything goes, the moment you allow anything to slide, then you're calling for trouble. Because what that means, right, is that you're going to find yourself, all right, battling and struggling with things that you should not even struggle with, you and your students or your pupils, will begin to battle things out, and you really do not want that to happen. All right, you really don't want that to happen. And so even teachers are beginning to set boundaries for themselves and their students to avoid burnout. Some teachers say that setting boundaries helps them avoid burnout and stay in the profession longer. All right, this was research carried out by Bernstein, Yamashiro, and Noah in 2013. And this is important because it indicates that healthy boundaries at work help someone find more fulfillment and less stress in their professional life. And so you leave room for a better professional life when you're able to set boundary in the workplace. You leave room for a better professional life if you're able to set boundaries in the workplace. And you get to choose how you want to set that boundary. I mean, it's your choice. It's your boundary. It's your boundary. So you get to choose how you want to set the boundary. Nobody dictates to you how to set the boundary. You choose. All right. So for people to experience greater well-being and fulfillment, they must learn about healthy boundaries. Very, very important. And if for any reason you're setting this boundary between you and your student, all right, or between you and your staff, then you need to let them understand, all right, why you are setting the boundary. Now let's talk about professional boundaries. Let's talk about professional boundaries. So we'll talk about professional boundaries, right? This actually has to do either client to customer, how do you call it now? A service provider to a client, right? Student to teacher, employee to employer, or employer to employee. Basically, as long as you have to interact with people at a professional level, right? So you need to set some boundaries. And the first point is you need to separate your personal life from your professional life. Very, very important. Separate your personal life from your professional life. You just have to. You can't continue to live in that space where there is no difference, all right, between you and the other person. Okay. Another one is if you're a teacher, tell the student the kind of conversations you want to have in your class. All right. Tell the student the kind of conversations you want to have in your class. If you are a medical practitioner or a therapist like I am, you can set boundaries like not connecting with your client on social media or respond to WhatsApp status, right? You can actually set that kind of boundary, all right, that you don't want to connect with them on social media and you don't want to have anything to do with their WhatsApp status. And one way to do that is to also block them from seeing your WhatsApp status. Very, very important. All right. Another personal boundary you can set is request to see your partner once a week and not every day. Now, this is for those who are not married, all right, and you think that you need to set some form of boundaries between yourselves. So I tag it as professional boundaries because you are being professional here right now. No emotions attached, all right. You're just being straightforward and being realistic with yourself. Okay, that's just why I put it under the class of professional boundaries, right? Then parents telling children to knock before getting to their rooms. I remember growing up as a child, right? You dare not go into my parents' room without knocking. Who are you? Where are you coming from? What the heck? I mean, what the heck? You can't even do that, all right? So you can set that up. So examples are teacher to student relationship, client therapist, employer employee, romantic relationships, parents to children. All these can come under professional boundaries when you're setting professional boundaries. Now let's look at this, how boundary setting helps with stress management. If you're still with me, let me know. Put a yes, yes, hi, hi, hi in the comment section. Let me know that you're still with me. Let me know that I'm not alone right here. Let me know. Let me know if you are there. Let me know. Let me know. Okay, let's continue. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So let's look at how boundary setting helps with stress management. Let's kill this thing once and for all. Let's nail it in the head and let's scatter the table and reconstruct the table. So let's talk about maintaining balance. Let's talk about maintaining balance while setting up boundaries to help us with stress management. We need to look at balance. It's important that we put balance to everything. Now, for one thing, when we don't set boundaries on what we will say yes and no to, we tend to take on more responsibilities that we are comfortable with just because we want to please other people, right? And so you need to create that balance, all right? You need to keep conflict minimal, all right? So talking about balance, first of all, let me even elaborate on that. Sometimes we take responsibilities for the things that we actually should not take responsibilities for, simply because either because we don't want to offend someone, right, or because we don't want the other person to feel bad, or you think that owe yourself you owe yourself that duty, right? Sometimes we find ourselves in that particular state, right? We find ourselves in that particular state, and we just think that no, we need to put ourselves right at that point. No, you don't need to. You don't need to put yourself under that stress. You don't need to put yourself under that how do I call it now? You don't put yourself under that dilemma. Okay, so maintain balance. All right, set boundaries, know your responsibilities. Don't take more than what you can handle. Don't form good boy, good girl, good man. Is a strong man. He cares about us. No, because when you're done and you get back home, nobody would be there to tend to you. So everybody's going to leave you, and when you fail at your own duties, they are going to come to you. So you don't set boundaries on what you say yes and no to. You take on more responsibilities than you are comfortable with. When you don't know when to say yes or no to somebody, to something, to responsibility, and all you just want to do is just to please others, you're going to find yourself in deep trouble. All right. The next thing is keeping conflicts minimal. I mean, so right now, just to backtrack, we're looking at how boundary setting can help with stress management, right? Good. So come with me. Now, keeping conflict minimal. When we say yes to things that will be better addressed with a no, we tend to feel resentful after a while. Some of us may not realize that we have an hand in our own overly busy schedule, while others of us may be mad at ourselves for letting things happen or for letting it happen. So you need to try as much as possible to keep conflict minimal. And that can only happen when you know when to say yes and you know when to say no. When you don't take up every responsibility that comes your way, you know when to say yes, you know when to say no, you know when to say sorry, give me a moment, let me think about it. Don't just accept everything that comes your way. Otherwise, you'll break down and you still have to do that job. So boundaries helps you to keep conflicts minimal, all right, because you only take up the responsibilities that you can take. Now, signs that you need to work on boundaries. If any of this happens, then you know that you need to start setting boundaries. Any of the next things I'm going to say, if they're happening in your life right now, as you are listening to me, if you are experiencing any of this, then it means that you need to set boundaries for yourself. Number one is you feel resentful of people asking too much of you, and it seems to happen often. If you're in this space, then it means that you have not set boundaries for yourself. Two, you find yourself saying yes to things you'd rather not do just to avoid upsetting or disappointing others. You are not okay. I don't want to use that word. I'm on hair. Let me not use that word. But if you're finding it difficult to say yes to things, if you're finding it difficult to say no to things and you're saying yes to them when you actually do not want to do them, but you're not doing that because you don't want to upset people or disappoint people, then there's a problem. It means that you're not setting boundaries. Where you find yourself feeling unappreciated because you're doing more for others than they are doing for you, there's a problem. There is a big problem there. Where you tend to keep most people at an arm's length because you're afraid of letting people get too close and overwhelming you, that's another problem. That's a very big problem, I must say, right? Because the fear that the fear that if you let people get too close, okay, something's going to happen also means that you don't know yourself yet. It means that you don't really know who you are. You really don't have an identity for yourself yet. And so you are trying as much as possible to keep that distance, right? Because you don't want people to burden you. Now, note, I'm not saying that you should allow everybody into your life. No, but see the clause there. You are afraid of letting people get close or too close, right, and overwhelm you. That is the clause. You'd always need people close to you. You'd always need some people close to you because you actually need people. We are social beings, and so we'd always need people. Now, the stress you feel from disappointing others is greater than the stress or doing things that inconvenience or drain you in an effort to please them. If you're at that point, then this is a sign that you need to start working on setting boundaries for yourself. All right. So here are some questions that you need to ask yourself. All right, when it comes to boundaries. And these questions, the questions to ask yourself when discovering where your personal boundaries lie are different from the questions you may ask yourself when deciding where to actually set your boundaries in specific situations, because they take into account practical factors like the cost of setting boundaries. Now, what I'm trying to say here is that the questions to ask yourself when you're deciding where to actually when you're deciding, when you're trying to discover your personal boundary, rather, is different from the questions that you would ask yourself where you want to set those boundaries, because they need to be as practical as possible. And for some, you need to put certain things into consideration while setting the boundary. So let's look at these questions. So now, these questions are questions that you are asking, right? Because you want to discover, all right, yourself. You want to discover those boundaries. One, if nobody would be disappointed, would you prefer to say yes or no? If nobody will be disappointed, if nobody will tell you I'm disappointed, would you be willing to say yes or no? Looking at all the benefits and costs of this particular situation that you are in, both the tangible and intangible ones, is it worth the effort to say yes? Perhaps you're listening to me right now and you're about to, and you're on the job, right? And each time you look at the benefits and the costs of this role that you have, ask yourself, is it worth to actually say yes? Or yours is a relationship, ask yourself, does it worth the stress? Or yours is a business deal, ask yourself, does it worth the stress? All right. Would you feel comfortable posting the same request to someone else? Now, this request has been posted to you or posted at you. Are you comfortable posting same request to another person? If people will be upset with you if you said no, do you truly feel that they are coming from a respectful and reasonable place? And if not, might it be time to start setting some limits? And so you may want to ask yourself, these are questions that you need to ask when you're trying to discover your boundaries, setting up your boundaries. That look, if people will be upset with me if I said no, do I really think that they are coming from a place of respect and reasonability, or do I just think that they are just saying it just for saying sake, not that they care? All right. Is this a precedent you want to set? You need to ask yourself, is this a precedent that I want to set? I tell people that when I have reasons to discuss with people, bachelors or the likes, that look, whatever you will not accept, right? Whatever you not accept in marriage, don't start accepting it while you are dating. And it's the same thing. I tell people that look, if you are at a job, all right, and some offers are made to you, whatever you will not accept or you're not able to do consistently, don't even start it at all, because it becomes a norm. If you take it up today, you will not have any justification to say no tomorrow. Because when you say no tomorrow, they will ask you, but you did it the other time. And then you start looking for reasons to defend yourself. So you need to understand where you stand, all right? So you don't set precedents or something that you're not able to continue. It's just like if you take your kids out every Sunday, Any Sunday that you do not take them out, they will come out and say, Daddy, what happened? We're not going out today, because you have set a precedent. All right. You have set a precedent. So don't start what you can't finish. Let's put it that way. Don't start what you can't finish. Think of someone you feel has a very healthy boundary, the kind you would like to emulate. How do you think they would respond in this situation? Just think of someone that you think has a healthy boundary, all right, and think of how they would respond in that situation. Now, these are questions. The next set of questions are questions that would help you set boundaries. Like, what is fair? All right, so you want to ask yourself, what is fair? Yeah. All right, you're asking yourself, what is fair? All right. If you're in the position of the other person, would your solution still appear to be fair? Would your solution still appear to be fair if you're in the position of the other person? Is there another solution here that could be more of a win-win, so that you don't lose everything? All right, so you need to check that out and see to that. Look, is there any position? Is there another solution rather to this whole thing, so that I don't have to accept this thing perhaps, and I don't have to go through all this. And so you begin to check if there are other solutions that will give you a win-win situation rather than you losing and the other person winning, or vice versa. Again, ask yourself what is fair. If you're in the position of the other person, would your solution still appear to be fair? Have you committed to this, or is this an expectation that the other person is placing on you? Sometimes people place expectations on us, right? They believe so much in us, and you do say, I'm like, I did not expect that from you. I am disappointed. Sometimes when I hear that thing, I'm like, oh no. Does this person really understand that I am still human? I am still me. I'm still prone to error. I'm not working any form of magic whatsoever. Right? So you need to ask this question. They will help you set your boundaries. Next is, does the act of making a change or setting a boundary create more stress than it might alleviate in the long run? So you need to ask yourself that as well. Does the act of making a change or setting this boundary create more stress than it might alleviate in the long run? Now, when you imagine the result in a year from now, do you get a sense that this would be a better solution than what you have now? Think about that. Imagine the results that you get in a year from now. Do you get a sense that this would be a better solution than what you have right now? If you're setting a boundary and you feel the other person is unreasonable in fighting the boundary, and you're willing to let the relationship go rather than feel hurt by the boundary mismatch, are you willing to let the relationship go? Now you're setting boundaries between you and someone, right? And you feel like the person is unreasonable. The person is fighting this boundary, and you think that the person is unreasonable. Are you willing to let the relationship go rather than feel hurt by the boundary mismatch? You need to ask yourself this question, right? Now, these questions will help you set healthy boundaries. They're going to help you set those boundaries that you need to set for yourself, so that you don't find yourself at that position where you are not counting the cost before you set the boundaries. Now, these are the resources that you'll be getting. You're going to get some PDFs, healthy boundaries worksheet, building better boundaries, how to create healthy boundaries, boundary worksheets for kids and parents, drawing effective personal boundaries, and then other stuff. So I'm going to you get them from that link. If you click, or if you go to that link right now, those resources are there and they are available for you. They're available for you. Thank you for staying with me up to this particular point. Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Let me say something about just before we go. Let me say something about these questions. Right? Let me say something about these questions. Now, asking yourself these questions allow you to be clear on issues such as guilt, so you don't feel guilty. All right, and then they also help you to think about the motivation. Is it worth it? So you can move forward with the least amount of stress. All right. So this particular question that you're asking yourself when you're trying to discover where your personal boundary lies would help you deal with guilt. So I don't feel guilty, right? I have set these boundaries, and so you don't begin to, and you're able to motivate yourself, okay, to continue, all right, to maintain the boundaries or to even set the boundaries at all. I thought it was important that I mentioned that. I felt it was important that I mentioned that. So let me see, do you have questions? Do you have questions? Let me see if you have questions. If you have questions, let me know. Let me know if you have questions. Let me know. Just drop them. I'll read your questions and I'll take them one after the other. Like I said, don't forget to subscribe to YouTube channel. We're going to be having more of this training from time to time. We're going to be having more of this training from time to time because I think it's important that we understand our mental health and begin to remove those things that can bring stress to us, because you see, stress is something that you cannot wish away. It is there, all right. But the moment you're able to identify your stressors, it makes life easier. Makes life easier for you the moment you're able to identify your stressors. Because for any reason at all, if anybody is ill and you get yourself to a healthcare professional, they are not just looking at the symptoms, right, that you're presenting. They want to have a history. And that's why they take history. Or they have a file for you and then they take notes, because they don't just want to treat what you're presenting right now. Otherwise, they will find themselves treating something else. So they want to know. They don't want to give the wrong medication, right? They don't want to give the wrong thing. They want to be sure that they are treating the right thing, that they are doing the right thing per time. So feel free to reach out to me, reach out to Rel Consulting. Feel free. Rel Consulting is an organization that is focused on employee wellness, all right, as much as individual wellness as well. We offer employee assistance programs such that companies can put in place proper mental health practices that would help them, all right, that will help their staff to be productive. All right. And also, you can reach out to me for mental health therapy, speaking engagement, and a host of other things. I run a podcast called the Rising Heroes Podcast. You can check it out on Spotify or Apple. All right. And do listen. Thank you so much for joining me. We have come to the end of the show. Thank you and good night. If you have questions, you can send me a mail if at any point in time you have questions.